Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Daily English Talk, the podcast where we help you improve your English skills by listening to real conversations. I'm your host, Emily, and today we have a very special guest joining us, James. He's here to talk about a topic that I think many of us can relate to: how to stay focused. Welcome, James.
Hi, Emily. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
It's great to have you. So, today's topic is all about focus. I think we all know how hard it can be to stay focused, especially with so many distractions around us. I mean, we've got our phones, social media, even just everyday things that take our attention away. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I think focus is something we all struggle with at times. It's so easy to get distracted, especially when you're trying to work or study. But there are some strategies that can help us stay focused, even when it feels difficult.
Yes, exactly. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's start by talking about why it's so hard to stay focused these days. What do you think, James?
Well, I think one of the main reasons is that we have so much information coming at us all the time. Think about it. Every time we pick up our phone, there's something new to look at. We get notifications, messages, emails, and it's hard to ignore them. Our brains are always looking for new and exciting things, and that makes it difficult to stay on one task for a long time.
That's so true. And I feel like multitasking is another issue. A lot of people think they're being more productive when they're doing 2 or 3 things at the same time, but actually, it can make it harder to focus. What's your opinion on multitasking?
I agree. Multitasking seems like a good idea because you feel like you're getting more done, but in reality, you're dividing your attention. You're not giving 100% to any of the tasks. Studies have shown that multitasking can actually reduce productivity because your brain has to switch back and forth between different activities. It takes time for your brain to refocus each time you switch.
That's really interesting. So, if multitasking isn't the solution, what can we do to improve our focus? Do you have any practical tips?
Yes, definitely. One tip I always share is to break your work or study into smaller, manageable tasks. Instead of thinking, I need to study for 3 hours, you can say, I'm going to focus on this one topic for 30 minutes. When you give yourself a shorter, clear goal, it's easier to stay focused because it doesn't feel overwhelming.
I love that idea. Breaking tasks down into smaller pieces sounds much more manageable. It also feels less stressful. What else can we do to stay focused?
Another thing that helps is taking regular breaks. I know it might sound counterproductive, but our brains can only focus for so long before they need a rest. The Pomodoro technique is a good example of this. You work for 25 minutes, then take a 5-minute break. After 4 Pomodoros, you take a longer break, like 15 or 30 minutes. This method helps keep your brain fresh and prevents burnout.
I've heard of the Pomodoro technique, and I've tried it a few times myself. It really does help. But what about distractions? You mentioned earlier that our phones and social media can be big distractions. How can we deal with that?
That's a great question. One way is to create a distraction-free environment. If you're trying to focus, put your phone on airplane mode or leave it in another room. You can also use apps that block social media for a certain amount of time. The goal is to remove the temptation so you can give your full attention to what you're doing.
That's such a good point. I've noticed that when my phone is next to me, even if I don't check it, just knowing it's there can be distracting. So putting it away really helps. Do you have any other tips?
Yes, one more thing I'd suggest is to set specific times for checking emails or social media. For example, instead of checking your phone every time you get a notification, you could say, I'll check my messages at 12 o'clock and 5 o'clock. That way, you're not constantly interrupting your focus to see what's new.
I like that. Setting boundaries for when to check things can definitely help reduce distractions. So, to sum up, we've talked about breaking tasks into smaller steps, taking regular breaks, creating a distraction free environment, and setting specific times to check emails or social media. These are really practical tips that anyone can try. Do you have any final thoughts on staying focused, James?
Yes, just one final thought. Focus is like a muscle. You have to train it over time. Don't get frustrated if you lose focus now and then. It happens to all of us. The key is to keep practicing and trying different techniques until you find what works best for you.
That's great advice. Thank you so much for sharing these tips with us, James. I'm sure our listeners will find them really helpful.
You're very welcome, Emily. I hope everyone listening finds these tips useful and can start improving their focus today.
Well, that's all we have for today's episode of Daily English Talk. Thank you again, James, for joining us, and thank you to all our listeners for tuning in. Remember, staying focused is something we can all get better at with practice. We'll be back with another episode soon, so don't forget to subscribe and keep practicing your English. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye, everyone.